and also thank you for inviting me for this APS webinar on constipation. So with that, I would start my presentation. Is my presentation visible to all?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we have all heard Dr. Sainani yesterday talking about an approach to constipation and the management part of it. I will be covering bowel dysfunction in relation to the causes, signs, and symptoms, and we'll present a few slides at the end, and we will decide whether is it indeed a lifestyle disorder or not. Some of the topics might have been covered yesterday by Dr. Sainani, so that will be a, a revision for all. So,
English, sir.
is it visible?
Yeah. No, it's
The second
visible,
slide?
but you no, only we can visible first slide, but you do full screen. It's not full screen.
Is it not full screen? But here it is. Okay. Just give me one
You can
second.
see,
I will.
yeah.
This is not. Actually, you are not able to see the full screen because here I am seeing the full screen here. But
Rahul,
just a
sir.
minute.
Rahul, sir.
Samsher. Just a minute.
Sir.
Sir, your screen is visible. Start from the first slide.
Okay.
Perfect. Play the slide now.
Now is it visible?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, the complete presentation, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Just do the full screen now. F5.
This is full screen only. I am on full screen on my end. You are not able to see the full screen?
It's okay. Doesn't matter.
We can
I
go ahead.
continue like this?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I begin my my presentation with a quote by Sir Arthur Hust, that no organ in the body is so misunderstood, so slandered and maltreated as the colon. But this, mind you, is an old saying. With advances over the past decade or so, there has been tremendous understanding about the functioning and the malfunctioning of the colon, and how we can evaluate the disorders of the colon, and constipation being one of the prime. So when it comes to constipation, every person or many societies have their own different definitions about what constitutes constipation. What is commonly followed is the American College of Gastroenterology definition, which is unsatisfactory defecation characterized by infrequent stools, usually less than 3 times a week, and difficult stool passage or both. And when these symptoms are present for more than 12 weeks or 3 months, it suggests chronic constipation. Well, the Indian consensus studies for constipation, our guidelines have made a slight different to this definition, and where we say that for Indians, less than 5 times a week, because of our increased motility as compared to the West, and also because of more fiber content, we generally have more frequent stool passages. So for Indians, we define it as less than 5 times stool passages in a week as constipation. When it comes to constipation, there are certain misconceptions. The commonest being that bowel movement every day is absolutely necessary, and if the waste material is not thrown out or does not come out of the body, then it will be absorbed and dangerous substances will be absorbed, and they will cause poor health or shorten the lifespan. And this, mind you, has leads sometimes to marked overuse and sometimes abuse of laxatives. And we all know that overuse and abuse of laxatives has its own sets of problem. Well, the recent most study published in 2017 shows that the overall prevalence of chronic constipation in India varies from 12 to 17%. Though this is not a very widespread or national registry data, but or limited data that is available shows around 12 to 17%, which is in itself significant number of patients considering the overall population of our country. And compared to the Asian data, it is almost similar to what our Indian data says. And whenever we talk about constipation, one thing is important is the physiology of defecation, especially of the anorectal junction, about how the angle changes during straining and how it is at rest. And this is a very important part of an important subset of defecatory disorders or constipation called as the defecatory disorders. I believe Dr. Porwal will be talking a little bit about that in a subsequent talk. So we all know that the anorectal angle is anorectal junction is at a particular angle at resting, and it almost straightens during squatting or when we apply pressure, and that allows for ease of the passage of stools. And any change in this angle because of any reasons, be it surgical, be it a prolapse, or be it any muscular problem, can lead to evacuation disorders or defecatory disorders, as they are called as, which is an important subset of the chronic constipation.
Excuse me, sir, your slides are not moving.
They are not moving?
Yeah.
Yeah, we are on first slide only.
Oh, there's something is in. Oh, just a minute. I'm very sorry for this. Just a minute. I'm just stopping the sharing. I will restart it again. I think someone else is sharing the screen, so I cannot share it right now. So yeah. Now is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Now it's visible.
Can you see
sir.
the anorectal angle?
Yes, sir.
It's just like I'm just moving the slide. Just see if you can. The slide is moving or not. Is the slide moving now?
Moving, sir.
Moving. Yeah. Okay. I'm very sorry for that. There was some technical hitch. So whenever we are describing the bowel movements or the constipation, or in fact even altered bowel habits, one important tool, especially in our outpatient, is the Bristol stool chart, because many times patients' description and their actual stool form might be totally different. So what is easier is to show these patients the Bristol stool chart, and normally type 1 and 2 would constitute a constipated sort of stools. Type 3, 4 is normal, and type 6 and 7 will go towards the diarrheal consistency of stools. So what we are looking at is type 1 and type 2 is what we would want. If the patient points toward these two types, then it means that we are dealing with a constipation predominant. What is important and what very frequently irritating is many patients come self-diagnosed by reading their symptoms and comparing it in the internet, and they think they are suffering from a big problem, and they come to us with a certain set notions in their mind, and this is when we have to take a proper history and evaluation and deal with the problem. So for that, we need to know about the various causes and etiology of constipation. Well, patient would come by different meaning, as just passage of hard stools, less volume of stools, as I said, bowel movement not happening every day. Some people are even concerned if the bowel movement is not happening in the morning. Any discomfort in the abdomen is perceived as being of constipation. So patients will come with different meanings, and they will self-diagnose themselves as constipation. But a thorough history taking comes handy in properly diagnosing first whether the presence or absence of constipation, and if a slightly detailed history is taken, we can in fact even also diagnose certain types of constipation. So how do you diagnose constipation? See, constipation primarily is defined to in the very basic language as primary constipation and secondary, where there are certain etiologies. So primary is divided as normal transit constipation, slow transit constipation, and defecatory disorders, which I just mentioned earlier. So this is one slide which shows that 80% of the constipation is generally functional constipation. In 20% it is organic, which would be either mechanical obstruction, drugs, or certain systemic diseases or causes, which I will describe later. Functional constipation is normal, slow, or pelvic floor dyssynergia or defecatory disorders. There can be an overlap between two different types of constipation, and sometimes and also an overlap with IBS. So we again stressing on the point that history taking is very important in the initial evaluation of any patient coming to us with chronic constipation. This is the Rome 4 diagnostic criteria for functional constipation. I am not going to go too much into detail. It is available on the net, very frequent, easily. When we come to the pathophysiology, based on the pathophysiological causes, we can get some clue about the etiology. Like if there is any obstruction in the patency or the lumen, it generally signifies an organic cause. If there is a defect in the propulsion, that is a transit constipation, then it's generally functional, but can be organic also, because certain disease conditions like secondary constipations can present with slow transit constipation. Defective anorectal function is generally almost always signifies a pelvic floor dysfunction. However, if all the evaluation is normal, there is no pathophysiological cause, then it generally indicates that we are dealing probably with a functional constipation. Some people ask, what are the risk factors for constipation? Well, there are quite a few risk factors for constipation, but related to the lifestyle or to this are low level of physical activity, what are shown in red. Low level of education sometimes is known in certain studies. Female gender has a preponderance for developing constipation. Advancing age, quitting of smoking. People who have a long-term habit of smoking, especially use of smoking just prior to their bowel movements, if they suddenly stop smoking, they can experience constipation, is seen in around 10 to 15% of such patients. And obviously use of certain medications can be associated with constipation. I will describe in short about the common medications that can cause constipation. Coming to mechanical obstruction, that is the secondary constipation. So any anal stenosis, colorectal cancer, extrinsic compression, stricture of the colon or the rectosigmoid junction, rectocele or sigmoidocele can lead to constipation, and most of these causes would require a proper surgical intervention for the management. Coming to the medications, well, there is an entire list of medications which can cause constipation. However, coming to the common ones, like taking acetaminophen, that is paracetamol, more than 7 tablets a week, simple aluminum containing antacids which are available as an OTC or over the counter, certain antispasmodics if taken very frequently, tricyclic antidepressants, very commonly used drugs, certain anticonvulsants and anti-cancer agents also, calcium channel blocker, again a very commonly used antihypertensive, calcium supplements, diuretics, again furosemide, a very commonly used diuretic, iron supplements. Well, these are few very commonly used drugs which we prescribed or are being prescribed to the patients on day-to-day basis and cause constipation. And if you take a detailed history, probably by just eliminating these drugs or replacing them with another alternative can get rid of the patient of his or her constipation. NSAIDs, again, the NSAIDs as well as the opioid agonist like tramadol, which is now easily available, again as a very efficient painkiller, but is known to cause significant constipation if taken in a higher dose or for a prolonged period of time. Certain systemic disorders, as we are well aware of, like diabetes, thyroid disorders, calcemia, hypokalemia, pituitary disorders, even pregnancy is known to induce constipation. And since it is a neurological, many neurological conditions, especially stroke, spinal cord injuries, certain neuropathies, Parkinsonism, the drugs for Parkinsonism, as well as Parkinsonism as a disease per se, can also cause secondary constipation. What do the patients of constipation normally complain to us in addition to their stool complaints? They would also complain of bloating or fullness, straining of stools, passage of hard stools, incomplete evacuation. Sometimes the family members would complain that the patient is spending too much time in the toilet. Certain perianal discomfort is experienced by certain individuals. A sense of anal blockage, like something is stuck and the stools are not coming out, is again a common symptom. And then occasionally bleeding PR can be a presenting feature of patients with constipation. Whenever we are taking a history taking or evaluating a patient of constipation, chronic constipation, certain red flag signs or alarm signs should bring us, uh, should be taken into consideration, because these are the patients with these signs are the patients who need early or immediate evaluation and simultaneous treatment. So what are the normally alarming features or red flag signs, as they are called as? So these are any person coming with new onset constipation after the fifth decade, change in the caliber of stool, that is, he says that his stool size or has changed and they have become narrower, significant amount of blood in stools, constipation if associated with significant weight loss, fever, presence of an abdominal mass associated with loss of appetite. And if the patient has come with features or clinically has anemia along with constipation, then these patients should be evaluated further. They are more likely to have some significant secondary cause of constipation. So on history taking, certain features that help us recognize whether we are dealing with a functional or an organic cause, and most of the red flag signs if present would go towards an organic cause. So a long-standing constipation without any constitutional symptoms, without bleeding PR, without any mass or history of obstruction, without happening in the third or fourth decade of life, generally goes towards functional constipation. However, any patient with a recent onset constipation having certain significant constitutional symptoms like anorexia, weight loss, fever, bleeding, having a family history of significant colorectal malignancies, all these point towards an organic feature. Important to know, because in the functional you can try therapy and then go into assessment, whereas in the, if we think of an organic cause, it is better to evaluate these patients first, because any significant or severe cause of constipation can be found. As I said, sometimes history can point towards a type of constipation. So pelvic floor dyssynergia, with there is very typical history of straining at stools, prolonged straining, excessive straining, feeling of obstruction of stools getting stuck right at the exit or in the rectum or near the anal canal, heaviness, persistent heaviness in the perineum, and history of using to use fingers or certain maneuvers like called as digital evacuation for evacuation of the stools. All these point towards a pelvic floor dyssynergia. We have seen in the evaluation that these type of patients need a very different subset of uh, uh, investigations. Dr. Porwal, I believe, will be covering some of them or most of them in the subsequent talk. So to the important question, is constipation a lifestyle disorder? Well, there are still some questions to it, but there is enough evidence to say that yes, now significant number of patients suffering from constipation is purely because of their lifestyle disorders. There is enough data to say that constipation can be caused or aggravated by stress. Lack of physical activity is important for constipation. dietary fiber, lack in dietary fiber because of the change in the diet or westernization of the diet, and we have overpopulation. The fast food culture, is it called? Insufficient fluid or liquid intake because of social pressure or work pressure, ignoring the urge of bowel movements, and gradually this ignoring leads to what is called as constipation. Stress, as we know, can alter the body homeostasis, called change in the circadian rhythm, alter the autonomic nervous system, which we all know has an important part in altering bowel motility, can cause constipation. More frequently, it is also associated with associated abdominal discomfort. So it leads to what is called as an irritable bowel syndrome. So to take this important component out, what we need is to take our time to relax, because that relaxation of the mind and body will also lead to relaxation and evacuation of our bowel. Low fiber diet, we all know how, because it leads to decreased bulk in stool, which in turn leads to decreased urge, hardening of stools, and in turn leads to what is called as constipation. So all the fast food, our traditional Indian diet has significant fiber content, but with westernization and a lot of influence, the pizzas, the burgers, and the soft and the fast food have decreased fiber content and decreased bulk of stools. So this is one of the important lifestyle causes of constipation. Lack of physical activity is it's very well known that the bowel activity or bowel motility is goes hand in hand with your physical activity. And in today's day and age, with working in front of the computers and lack of physical activities and spending more than half of the day sitting on the desk, has led to sedentary lifestyle, decreased bowel mobility, and constipation. So physical activity, just by improving the physical activity, sometimes we see a significant change in the bowel movements or the bowel motility of the patient. So physical activity, we know, is important. That's why it is very commonly seen in the urban population. So the take home is that we need to understand the physiology of defecation. There is different types of constipation available, constipation seen, and each type of constipation has a different approach and management. A good history taking, including the history of medications and history and diagnosing of metabolic disorders, can solve more than half of our patients' problems of constipation. Do not miss the red flag signs. This is very, very important. Always, many patient of constipation ask for red flag signs like bleeding PR, weight loss, fever, lump, anorexia, features of anemia. Always ask before starting these patients on medications. Ask about the lifestyle. If there is a significant lifestyle issues related, then certain changes in the lifestyle can go a long way in treating the patient's constipation without having to do any severe significant evaluation or uh, without starting any medications for these patients. And proper diagnosis in the form of history taking and then certain evaluation will help us in the effective management of these patients. Thank you.